Jake Miller stood at the entrance of Galactic Unity Academy, his heart pounding hard against his ribs. The massive dome of the school stretched above him, its transparent panels revealing the stars beyond. Unlike the other students flowing around him, Jake walked with a careful, measured gait. Every step on the metal floor felt too light, too bouncy. Earth gravity is 2.3 times our standard setting, the blue-skinned administrator had explained during his orientation. We've adjusted your quarters to 1.5 standard as a compromise. The rest of the academy remains at 1.0 standard gravity. Translation: Jake would feel like he was walking on the moon almost everywhere he went. A nearby group of tall, willowy aliens with 4 arms each turned to stare as he passed. One of them whispered something, and the others leaned away slightly. Jake pretended not to notice. It wasn't the first time he'd seen that reaction since arriving at the station. Deathworlder, they called humans behind their backs. Jake had looked it up. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world due to its high gravity, extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, and the fact that humans had evolved as predators. Most of the galaxy's intelligent species came from gentle worlds with stable climates and less threatening ecosystems. The Academy's automated guidance system led Jake through winding corridors to his first class. Physical education. Great. Just what he needed on his first day. The gym doors slid open to reveal a vast space at least 3 times larger than any gym on Earth. Strange equipment lined the walls, and padding covered nearly every surface. In the center stood about 20 students of various species, all wearing matching blue and white uniforms. At the head of the group stood a tall instructor with pale green skin and a long neck. This must be Instructor Volmar, according to Jake's schedule. The alien's eyes widened slightly as Jake approached. "Ah, you must be the Earth transfer." "Miller, Jake Miller," Volmar said, voice melodious and high-pitched. "Please join the class." Jake nodded and took his place at the edge of the group. The nearest students shifted away, creating a small empty circle around him. "Class, as I mentioned last week, we have a new student joining us. Jake Miller comes from Earth, a high-gravity planet. This is the first time our academy has hosted a human in the physical education program." All eyes turned to Jake. He could almost feel them scanning him, assessing the threat. "I thought humans had their own special program," said a student with purple scales and a flat, wide head. "The Academy Board decided it would be better for cultural integration if Miller joined standard classes," Volmar explained. "We will make adjustments as needed." A quiet murmur spread through the group. Jake caught fragments of their whispers. "Dangerous if they lose control. Twice as strong as Kurlan's. Evolve as hunters." Jake kept his face neutral. He'd been warned about this by the few humans who had ventured into interstellar education before him. The misconceptions, the fear, the isolation. His parents had encouraged him to be patient. "You're not just a student," his mother had said. "You're an ambassador for our entire species." "Today we begin our unit on adaptability training," Volmar announced, mercifully drawing attention away from Jake. "We will start with basic movement exercises to assess everyone's physical baseline." The class spread out across the gym floor. Jake followed their example, finding a space well away from others. First, simple stretches, Volmar demonstrated, bending their long limbs in ways that looked painful to Jake. As the class began their warm-up, Jake noticed something concerning. What Volmar called simple stretches seemed extremely difficult for a human body. The aliens around him bent in impossible ways, some folding completely in half backward, others extending limbs at strange angles. Jake did his best, following the basic movements while modifying others. Sweat soon dampened his uniform, not from exertion, but from stress. He could feel eyes on him whenever he modified an exercise. "Miller," Volmar called, floating over to him with graceful strides that barely touched the ground. "I see you're having difficulties. Perhaps I should prepare a separate regimen for." "No," Jake said quickly. "I can adapt. Just need time to learn." Volmar looked doubtful, but nodded. "Very well. Let me know if you need accommodations." As the instructor moved away, Jake took a deep breath. This was going to be harder than he thought. But he hadn't come all this way to be separated and treated differently. Somehow he would find a way to fit in, even if his bones were twice as dense and his muscles many times stronger than those of his classmates. The locker room fell silent when Jake walked in. 20 pairs of alien eyes, some clustered in groups of 4 or 6 on single faces, turned to watch the human's entrance. Jake kept his head down and moved toward the locker assigned to him. Unlike the uniform metal cubes he was familiar with from Earth, these lockers were bubble-shaped pods that opened with a touch. His was marked with his name in both standard galactic and English. At least they'd gotten that right. "You're supposed to remove your outer garments," came a friendly voice from his right. Jake turned to see a copper-skinned alien with 6 limbs and large dark eyes. The creature was already stripped down to what looked like a thin bodysuit. "I'm Trill, your roommate," the alien continued. "We haven't formally met yet. I was in biological studies when you arrived at our quarters." "Nice to meet you," Jake said, carefully extending his hand before remembering that handshakes weren't universal. He awkwardly pulled back. Trill's mouthparts clicked in what Jake hoped was amusement. "Don't worry about protocols. I studied human customs. The hand-clasping greeting, yes." Trill extended 2 of his upper limbs. Jake gently took one of them, mindful of his strength. The alien's skin felt smooth, like polished stone. "Interesting," Trill said. "Your body temperature is quite high. Are you ill?" "No, humans just run hot. About 37 degrees Celsius is normal for us." A small crowd of students had gathered at a safe distance, watching the exchange. Among them was a slender alien with blue skin who seemed more curious than afraid. "I'm Lux," the blue alien said, stepping forward. "I'm studying xenobiology. Would you mind if I asked you questions about human physiology sometime?" "Sure," Jake replied, surprised by the friendly approach. The locker room's atmosphere relaxed slightly as Jake changed into his gym uniform, a lightweight, stretchy material that adjusted to his body shape. The other students gradually returned to their own preparations, though they still kept a noticeable distance. When everyone entered the main gym, Instructor Volmar was floating near the center of the room. Literally floating, Jake realized, as the instructor hovered half a meter above the floor on what appeared to be a small anti-gravity disc. "Today we begin with light warm-up exercises," Volmar announced. 20 laps around the perimeter track. The class groaned collectively. Jake looked around, confused by their reaction until he saw the track. A winding path that curved not just around the gym's edge, but also up the walls and across portions of the ceiling. "The gravity will remain at standard setting," Volmar continued. "Begin at your own pace." The alien students started moving, some with graceful bounds that carried them far distances, others with quick, scuttling movements. Jake began jogging at what he considered a moderate pace. Within minutes he had passed most of the class. His Earth-adapted muscles, even in the lighter gravity, gave him a significant advantage. What would have been a demanding workout on Earth felt almost effortless here. He completed the 20 laps while most students were still struggling through their 10th. "Miller," Volmar called when Jake finished. "You seem unchallenged by this exercise." Jake tried to hide his heavy breathing, not wanting to seem weak. "It's different, but I'm managing." "Indeed," the instructor replied, looking thoughtful. "Perhaps you will find today's main activity more engaging. We're setting up the obstacle course for low-gravity training." At the far end of the gym, several assistant instructors were arranging floating platforms, hanging rings, and what looked like zero-gravity tunnels. The purpose of this exercise, Volmar explained once everyone had finished the warm-up, is to navigate unfamiliar gravitational environments. "We will reduce gravity to 0.3 standard for this section of the gym." The alien students chittered with excitement. For them, lower gravity meant even greater freedom of movement. For Jake, it meant something else entirely. a complete recalibration of his already challenged sense of balance. Miller, Volmar added quietly, hovering closer. This may be particularly challenging for you. Your species evolved in high gravity. Be cautious with your movements. Jake nodded, but he didn't fully understand the warning. How hard could it be? He'd seen videos of astronauts bouncing around on the moon. It looked fun. As the gravity field adjusted, Jake felt a strange lightness overtake his body. The alien students began to leap gracefully toward the obstacle course, some covering 10 meters in a single bound. Trill landed beside him. First time in low G. Yeah, Jake admitted. Word of advice, Trill said with a click of concern. Humans are stronger than you realize. Don't push off too. But Jake had already bent his knees and pushed himself toward the first platform, using what he thought was gentle force. He was about to learn a very important lesson about physics. Jake's gentle push sent him rocketing across the gym like a missile. His eyes widened in shock as he sailed past the first platform, the second platform, and straight toward the far wall. Time seemed to slow as he watched the horror unfold on the faces of his alien classmates. Incoming Deathworlder, someone shrieked. Scatter, yelled another. The aliens on the platforms between Jake and the wall pushed themselves away with surprising speed. Jake windmilled his arms uselessly, trying to somehow steer his body in midair. Use the resistance jets on your uniform, Instructor Volmar called out, voice urgent. The what? Jake shouted back. Too late, he spotted small control pads on his wrists that must have been the controls for maneuvering in low gravity. With no time to figure them out, Jake braced himself for impact. He crashed into a stack of equipment near the wall, sending hoverballs, anti-gravity weights, and training devices flying in all directions. The padding on the wall prevented serious injury, but the spectacular crash echoed throughout the gym. For a moment, complete silence filled the vast space. Then came the sound of Instructor Volmar's anti-gravity disc humming rapidly toward him. Miller, are you injured? The instructor's voice contained a mix of concern and exasperation. Jake extracted himself from the pile of equipment, embarrassment burning his cheeks. I'm fine. Just didn't expect to go so far. That was actually impressive, came Lux's voice as the blue alien drifted closer. I've never seen anyone cross the entire gym in a single bound without propulsion assistance. That's because it's dangerous and reckless, said a tall, insect-like student hovering nearby. This is why Deathworlders should have separate classes. Jake felt his shoulders slump. So much for making a good impression. Enough, Krell, Volmar said firmly. Miller is learning like everyone else. The instructor turned to Jake. Your muscle density and strength are significantly greater than most students here. In reduced gravity, that advantage is magnified. You must use approximately 1/10 of your normal force when pushing off surfaces. Jake nodded, mortified. Now, Volmar continued, addressing the whole class. Let's reset the equipment and continue. Miller, watch the others first, then try again with minimal force. The class resumed, with Jake carefully observing how the alien students navigated the course. They moved with elegant efficiency, using tiny adjustments from their resistance jets and minimal physical effort to glide between obstacles. When it was Jake's turn to try again, he barely twitched his legs to push off. This time, he moved at a reasonable speed, making it to the first platform without incident. The alien students watched with cautious interest as Jake began to get the hang of moving in low gravity. Use even less force for the next jump, Trill advised from a nearby platform. The distance is greater. Jake nodded, then pushed off with what felt like absurd gentleness, just the lightest pressure of his toes against the platform. He still overshot his target slightly but managed to grab a hanging ring to stop himself. Better, Volmar called. Now try the zero-G tunnel. The tunnel was a clear tube running through the center of the obstacle course, completely free of gravity. Students had to pull themselves along using handles, then exit with precise control. Jake entered the tunnel carefully. The feeling of complete weightlessness was disorienting, but also exhilarating. He pulled himself along, conscious of his strength. When he reached the exit, he used the slightest touch to guide himself to the next platform. "You're getting it now," Lux called encouragingly. As Jake's confidence grew, so did his enjoyment. There was something wonderfully freeing about moving in low gravity once he learned to control his strength. He completed the basic course without further incident, then joined the more advanced section where students were performing complex maneuvers between moving platforms. "Try a spinning exit from the high tunnel," suggested Trill. Jake hesitated, then decided to attempt it. He pushed off with controlled force, adding a twist to his body. To his surprise, he executed a perfect spiral and landed precisely on target. A few of the alien students actually applauded. "Miller," Instructor Volmar called, floating over. "That was exceptional body control for someone new to low gravity. It seems your high-gravity adaptations give you advantages beyond mere strength." Jake couldn't help smiling. "I think I'm starting to get the hang of it." "Then perhaps you're ready for a challenge," Volmar said. "The speed course record is currently held by Krell at 42 seconds. Would you care to attempt it?" Jake looked at the elaborate course, then at the still skeptical Krell, and finally at his new friend Trill, who gave an encouraging gesture with 3 limbs. "I'll give it a shot," Jake said. As he positioned himself at the starting point, Jake realized something had changed. The fear in his classmates' eyes had been replaced by curiosity and, in some cases, reluctant respect. They weren't just seeing the dangerous Deathworlder anymore. They were seeing what a human could really do. Word of Jake's performance in the gym spread through Galactic Unity Academy like a quantum wave. By lunchtime, students from every department were whispering about the human who had broken the speed course record by nearly 7 seconds. Some accounts were wildly exaggerated, claiming Jake had punched through walls or leaped over the entire gym in a single bound. Jake sat alone at a corner table in the cafeteria, picking at his food. The nutritional paste was specially formulated for human dietary needs, but it tasted like cardboard mixed with synthetic fruit. He missed real Earth food with actual texture. "Is this seat taken?" Lux appeared, carrying a tray of what looked like glowing blue cubes. "All yours," Jake replied, grateful for the company. Trill joined them moments later, followed by 2 other aliens Jake hadn't met before, a small furry creature with enormous eyes and a tall crystalline being that seemed to shimmer as it moved. "This is Pick," Trill said, indicating the furry one, "and Glow. They wanted to meet you." "Your performance in physical training was most impressive," said Glow, voice resonating like wind chimes. "I study comparative xenophysiology. Your species presents fascinating research potential." Jake wasn't sure if he should be flattered or uncomfortable about being viewed as a research subject. "Thanks, I guess." "What Glow means," Pick squeaked, "is that you're cool and we want to be friends." That made Jake smile. "Friends sounds good to me." Their conversation was interrupted when a shadow fell across the table. Jake looked up to see Krell standing there, flanked by several other students. The insect-like alien's compound eyes gleamed with what Jake interpreted as hostility. "We need to discuss the Deathworlder situation," Krell announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. This morning's incident could have resulted in serious injuries. Jake felt his face flush. "I apologize for that. It was an accident." "This time," Krell continued, "but your kind evolved as predators. Your reflexes are designed for violence. Your very presence creates an unsafe learning environment." The cafeteria had gone quiet, with all attention focused on their table. "That's completely unfair," Trill protested, rising on 4 limbs while the other 2 gesticulated in what Jake had learned was a sign of aggravation. "Jake hasn't threatened anyone." "Yet," said one of Krell's companions, a gelatinous blob that pulsed with red light. "We've studied Earth's history. Humans resort to violence as their primary solution to problems." Jake gripped the edge of the table, careful not to break it despite his rising anger. That's a massive oversimplification of an entire species. Is it? Krell leaned forward. Then why have 3 instructors approached you today about joining combat sports? They recognize what you really are. Jake blinked in surprise. He hadn't heard about this yet. The athletics department wants to speak with you, Lux confirmed quietly. Your performance this morning impressed them. Before Jake could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. What exactly is happening here? Administrator Droll, the blue-skinned alien who had first oriented Jake, stood nearby with arms crossed over his chest. Just a friendly discussion about safety concerns. Administrator, Krell said smoothly. It looks more like an attempt at intimidation, Droll replied. May I remind everyone that Galactic Unity Academy values diversity in all its forms. This includes biological diversity. Krell's mandibles clicked in apparent annoyance, but he backed away. We're forming a student safety committee to address our concerns formally. This isn't over. With that, he and his group moved to a different table. Sorry about that, Jake said to his new friends after Droll had moved on. I didn't come here to cause problems. You didn't, Trill assured him. Krell comes from a hive society where conformity is valued above all else. Anything different threatens his worldview. And he's angry you broke his record, Pick added with a chittering laugh. Later that afternoon, Jake was summoned to the athletics department. The head coach, a massive being named Gorv with thick, trunk-like limbs, greeted him enthusiastically. Miller, excellent performance today. We've reviewed the footage. Your natural abilities are remarkable. Thank you, sir. We want you on multiple teams. Gravity ball, resistance training, endurance races. With minimal training, you could dominate interstellar competitions. Jake shifted uncomfortably. I appreciate the offer, but I'm here to study engineering, not become an athlete. Gorv looked disappointed. Think about it. You'd be the first human to compete at this level. A pioneer for your species. I'll consider it, Jake said, though he wasn't entirely convinced. When Jake returned to his quarters that evening, he found a message waiting on his communication device. It was a formal challenge from Krell and the newly formed safety committee. To prove humans can safely integrate, you will compete against our top athletes in a multi-event competition. The Academy will witness whether a Deathworlder can control their abilities under pressure. 2 days from now. Accept or admit your presence endangers us all. Jake stared at the message for a long time. He had come to learn, not to compete. But refusing would only reinforce their fears about humans. With a sigh, he sent his response. Challenge accepted. The main gymnasium had been transformed overnight. What was once a simple training space now resembled an interstellar Olympic arena. Floating platforms hovered at various heights. Glowing lines marked tracks that spiraled in impossible directions. Strange equipment that Jake couldn't identify dotted the perimeter. Most striking of all was the audience. Nearly half the academy had shown up, with students and faculty packed into the viewing areas. Some held flashing signs with alien script. Others operated small hovering cameras that darted around recording everything. This got bigger than I expected, Jake muttered to Trill, who stood beside him in the competitors' area. The first human in a physical competition of the Academy. Of course, everyone came, Trill replied, 4 of his 6 limbs gesturing excitedly. Besides, Krell's group has been promoting this as some kind of proof that humans are too dangerous. Jake felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on him. Great. No pressure. Administrator Droll floated to the center of the gymnasium on a hover platform. Welcome to this special exhibition event. Today's competition will test various physical abilities across species, celebrating our biological diversity while promoting understanding between worlds. The diplomatic framing didn't fool Jake. This was a test, plain and simple. Krell and 4 other aliens joined Jake in the competition area. They represented the Academy's top athletes from different species. Krell's compound eyes glinted under the lights as he performed elaborate stretching movements with his 4 arms. The competition consists of 6 events, Droll announced. Strength, speed, agility, endurance, precision, and teamwork. Points awarded for each event will determine the overall winner. The first event was strength testing. Competitors had to lift increasingly heavy objects while the gravity was gradually increased. Jake felt confident as he stepped up to the starting position. The event began with simple weights at standard gravity. As the rounds progressed, both the weights and gravity increased. The crystalline competitor, a being named Zur, dropped out first, their delicate structure unsuited for heavy lifting. By the fifth round, only Jake and a massive rock-skinned alien named Groll remained. The gravity had been increased to 1.7 standard, still lighter than Earth, but challenging for most Academy residents. Groll struggled to lift the final weight, a dense cube of compressed matter. His stone-like skin cracked slightly with the effort, but he managed to raise it to the required height. When Jake's turn came, he planted his feet firmly, bent his knees, and lifted. Earth's natural gravity had prepared him for this moment. He raised the cube smoothly, earning surprised murmurs from the crowd. First event goes to Miller of Earth, Droll announced. The speed event followed, a complex race through three-dimensional space with varying gravity fields. Here, Jake's advantage diminished. While his raw speed was impressive, Krell's natural agility in changing gravity fields gave the insect-like alien a clear edge. Jake finished third, behind Krell and a serpentine competitor who could propel themselves through air like a living rocket. Speed event goes to Krell of Hive World Sitar, Droll announced to cheers from Krell's supporters. The agility course proved even more challenging for Jake. The test required navigating through narrow spaces and making sudden directional changes, movements that favored smaller, more flexible competitors. Jake's human frame, while strong, lacked the extreme flexibility of his alien competitors. He finished last, his bulkier body unable to squeeze through the tightest passages. "I see why you call Earth a death world now," Jake said to Trill during a short break. "Everything there must be designed for brute force rather than finesse." "Different evolutionary paths," Trill replied. "Your species adapted for endurance and strength. Most of us evolved for specialized environments." The endurance event confirmed Trill's assessment. Competitors had to maintain continuous movement through an obstacle course while wearing resistance suits. One by one, the alien competitors dropped out as their specialized physiologies reached their limits. Only Jake continued, his human body's remarkable stamina keeping him going long after the others had collapsed in exhaustion. Earth's harsh environment had produced a species built to persist. Endurance event goes to Miller of Earth, Droll announced. The precision event involved using various tools to complete delicate tasks while dealing with changing environmental conditions. Here, Jake's thicker fingers and unfamiliarity with alien technology put him at a disadvantage. He finished fourth, managing basic competence but lacking the natural precision of species with more specialized appendages. It's tied between Krell and Miller going into the final event. Trill informed Jake excitedly. "The teamwork challenge will decide everything." Jake looked confused. "Teamwork? But we're competing against each other." "For this event, you'll be paired with another competitor," Droll explained. "Success depends on how well you adapt to each other's abilities." To Jake's surprise, he was paired with Krell. "Well," Jake said, extending his hand to the insect-like alien, "looks like we need to work together." Krell's mandibles clicked uncertainly as he stared at the human's outstretched hand. The entire arena fell silent, waiting to see what would happen next. Krell stared at Jake's outstretched hand for what felt like an eternity. The gymnasium remained silent, hundreds of alien spectators holding their breath. Finally, the insect-like alien extended one of his forearms and grasped Jake's hand. "For the final score," Krell said, his mandibles clicking. "Nothing more." Jake nodded. "Fair enough." Their teamwork challenge turned out to be navigating a complex floating obstacle course while physically tethered to each other. A glowing energy band connected their waists, requiring coordinated movement. This will test whether different species can adapt to each other's physical capabilities, Administrator Droll announced. The pair that completes the course with the fastest time wins. Jake and Krell stepped onto the starting platform, awkwardly trying to find a comfortable distance between them. Your strength could be useful for the jumping sections, Krell admitted reluctantly. My flexibility will help in the narrow passages. We need a system, Jake suggested. Tap once on my arm if you want me to slow down, twice if I should speed up. Krell's compound eyes studied Jake. Acceptable. When the signal sounded, they moved forward with surprising coordination. Jake controlled his strength while Krell adapted his normally fluid movements to accommodate the human's heavier frame. They cleared the first obstacles faster than the other pairs. Jump coming, Jake warned as they approached a wide gap. I'll provide the power, you handle the landing. Jake bent his knees and pushed off with careful force. They sailed through the air together, with Krell expertly adjusting their trajectory using his multiple limbs. They landed perfectly on the other side. The crowd cheered, caught up in the unexpected display of cooperation. To everyone's surprise, including their own, Jake and Krell finished the course with the fastest time, beating the other pairs by a significant margin. The teamwork event goes to Miller and Krell, Droll announced. This means our overall competition ends in a tie. The audience erupted in a mix of cheers, clicks, whistles, and other alien sounds of approval. Jake turned to Krell, expecting the alien to be disappointed or angry. Instead, Krell's posture had softened. Your control was impressive, Krell admitted. Perhaps I misjudged some aspects of human physiology. It wasn't exactly friendship, but it was a start. In the days that followed, something unexpected happened. Students began approaching Jake with questions about human physical activities. Do you have special games on Earth? Asked a group of nebulous gas beings who floated rather than walked. Could you show us how humans train? Lux requested during lunch. Even instructor Volmar pulled Jake aside after class. The students are curious about your planet's physical education. Would you be willing to demonstrate some human activities? Jake saw an opportunity. I'd be happy to share games from Earth, but I'd like to learn about your worlds too. And so began what Jake would later call the Galactic Gym Exchange. 3 times a week, the physical education class devoted time to learning games and sports from different worlds. Jake taught them modified versions of basketball, using the variable gravity fields to create a 3-dimensional game space. The alien students were fascinated by the concept of dribbling, though many struggled with the coordination required. On Earth, we have to fight gravity constantly, Jake explained as he demonstrated a jump shot. It makes you stronger in certain ways, but it limits movement in others. Swimming lessons were particularly interesting. The Academy's pool could be filled with various liquids and adjusted for different pressures and temperatures. Jake showed his classmates how humans swam, while they demonstrated their own aquatic techniques. Some could propel themselves by expelling water through specialized openings, while others undulated their entire bodies in wave-like motions. Your swimming style is very inefficient, noted a squid-like student named Pod. But I suppose that's because you weren't designed for water. Exactly, Jake agreed. Humans adapted to land after our distant ancestors left the oceans. We can swim, but it's not our natural environment. Martial arts demonstrations created both concern and fascination. Jake carefully showed basic stances and movements, emphasizing discipline and control rather than combat. Human martial arts are about more than fighting, he explained. They teach balance, focus, and self-control. In return, Jake learned bizarre and wonderful physical activities from other worlds. Trill taught a 6-limbed dance that required balancing on different combinations of appendages. Lux demonstrated a blue skin meditation technique that involved precise muscle control and regulated breathing. The most unusual was a game from Krell's homeworld that combined elements of chess, gymnastics, and telepathic coordination. Players formed living structures with their bodies while simultaneously solving complex puzzles. I can't do the telepathic part, Jake admitted after trying the game. Human minds don't connect that way. Your physical strength compensates, Krell replied. his former hostility noticeably reduced. In a real hive, different members have different strengths. By the end of the month, physical education had become the most popular class at the academy. Students from other departments often came to watch or participate in the cultural exchanges. "I never thought I'd say this," Instructor Volmar told Jake after a particularly successful session, "but having a Deathworlder in class has been educational for everyone." Jake smiled. "I'm learning as much as they are, maybe more." What had begun as fear and suspicion was transforming into something much more valuable: understanding. The final day of the semester arrived faster than Jake expected. The main gymnasium had been transformed once again, this time into an elaborate assessment course combining elements from dozens of different worlds. Floating platforms, zero-gravity tunnels, underwater sections, and even heat-resistant zones filled the massive space. Administrator Droll stood on a hovering platform, addressing the assembled students and faculty. "Today marks the conclusion of our experimental adaptive physical education curriculum. Each student will be evaluated not just on physical performance, but on how well they've integrated techniques from other species." Jake stood with his classmates, no longer isolated but part of the group. Over the past weeks, the distance that had once surrounded him had gradually disappeared. He still caught occasional nervous glances when he demonstrated his full strength, but the fear had been replaced by respect and curiosity. "Our first assessment will be the individual showcase," Instructor Volmar announced. "Each student will demonstrate a physical routine incorporating at least 3 techniques from species other than their own." One by one, the students performed their routines. Trill combined human basketball moves with the fluid movements of the gas beings and the precision techniques of the crystalline species. Lux incorporated human martial arts stances into a traditional blue skin meditation sequence. Even Krell performed an impressive routine that included a modified human weightlifting technique adapted for his 4-armed physiology. When Jake's turn came, he stepped to the center of the gym. The gravity adjusted to standard setting. Still light for him, but he had learned to control his movements. He began with a series of movements inspired by Trill's 6-limbed dance, modified for his human body. Next, he transitioned into a breathing pattern he had learned from the gas beings, which helped him control his oxygen consumption. Finally, he demonstrated the mental focus technique from Krell's hive world, adapted to work without telepathy. The entire gymnasium erupted in applause when he finished. "Excellent adaptation of non-human techniques," Instructor Volmar noted. "Your control has improved dramatically since your first day." Following the individual showcases came the team assessments. Students were divided into mixed species groups tasked with completing a complex obstacle course that required everyone's unique abilities. Jake found himself on a team with Trill, Lux, Pod, the squid-like student, and surprisingly, Krell. They huddled together, planning their strategy. "The underwater section will be difficult for Jake," Pod observed. "His human lungs can't process liquid oxygen like mine, and the crystalline maze will be challenging for me," Krell added, his exoskeleton too rigid for the narrow passages. "Then we work together," Jake suggested. "I can help in the high-gravity zones. Pod handles the underwater section. Krell takes the precision challenges. Lux monitors our vital signs, and Trill coordinates, since he has the most balanced abilities among us." Their teamwork proved remarkably effective. When Jake struggled to hold his breath in the underwater section, Pod created air bubbles for him. When Krell needed extra force to push through a resistance barrier, Jake provided the strength. Together, they completed the course faster than any other team. After all assessments were finished, Administrator Droll gathered everyone for final remarks. "When we first integrated Earth humans into our standard physical education program, many expressed concerns." Droll began, his blue skin shifting to a deeper shade as he spoke. "Some feared the differences in physical capabilities would create insurmountable barriers. Others worried that a Deathworlder's natural strengths would disrupt the learning environment." Jake felt dozens of eyes turned toward him. Instead, Droll continued, we've witnessed something remarkable. The presence of different physiologies in the same class has led to greater understanding and adaptation. Students have learned not just about their own physical capabilities, but about the diverse evolutionary paths that have shaped life throughout our galaxy. Instructor Volmar floated forward. Based on the success of this program, the Academy will implement the new adaptive physical education curriculum permanently. Students from all worlds will train together, learning from their differences rather than being separated by them. A cheer rose from the assembled students. After the ceremony, Jake found himself surrounded by classmates offering congratulations and farewell wishes for the break between semesters. "Will you return next semester?" Trill asked, all 6 limbs expressing hope in their positioning. "Definitely," Jake replied. "I've learned more here than I ever expected." Even Krell approached, his formerly hostile posture now relaxed. "The safety committee has been disbanded," he informed Jake. "We've determined that with proper training and awareness, different species can coexist safely regardless of their world of origin." Coming from Krell, this was high praise indeed. Later that evening, Jake recorded a message to send back to Earth. His parents had been worried about his decision to attend the Academy, concerned about how he would be received as one of the first humans to join the regular program. "Mom, Dad, you wouldn't believe how things have changed," Jake began. "When I first arrived, they called me a Deathworlder, like it was something to fear. Now they're using what I've taught them about Earth physical training to improve their own techniques.